Napoleon Bonaparte remains one of history's most enigmatic and influential figures. His story, marked by meteoric rises and devastating falls, exemplifies the power of ambition, intellect, and resilience. Born into a modest Corsican family, Napoleon's journey from obscurity to emperor of a vast European empire has captivated scholars, writers, and the public for centuries. This chapter sets the stage for an exploration of his life, focusing on his enduring impact on the modern world and the elements that shaped his remarkable journey. Napoleon's era was one of profound transformation. The French Revolution had shattered the old order, creating a power vacuum and a climate of uncertainty. In this turbulent environment, Napoleon emerged as a leader capable of imposing order while championing revolutionary ideals. His ability to navigate the complexities of post-revolutionary France was instrumental in his ascent. Understanding this context is crucial to appreciating the depth of his achievements and the magnitude of his influence. At the heart of Napoleon's legend is his unparalleled military genius. From his early campaigns in Italy to his sweeping victories across Europe, he demonstrated a strategic acumen that reshaped the art of war. Yet Napoleon was more than a soldier. He was a statesman, a reformer, and a visionary. His legal code, the Napoleonic Code, laid the foundation for modern legal systems in many countries, embodying principles of equality before the law and secular governance. These contributions extend far beyond his military exploits, underscoring his multifaceted legacy. Napoleon's life also reflects the dualities of human nature. He was both a liberator and a conqueror, an idealist and a pragmatist. While he championed meritocracy and individual rights, his imperial ambitions often led to widespread suffering and oppression. This complexity makes him a compelling subject of study, as it challenges simplistic interpretations and invites a nuanced understanding of historical leadership and power. The fascination with Napoleon is partly fueled by his dramatic narrative. Few figures in history have experienced such dramatic shifts in fortune. From his humble beginnings in Corsica to his rise as Emperor of France, from his triumphs on the battlefield to his exile and lonely death on St. Helena, Napoleon's life is a story of extremes. This narrative structure lends itself to both admiration and cautionary tales, making him a timeless figure of study. Equally important is Napoleon's role in shaping modern Europe. His campaigns redrew the continent's political map, dismantling old monarchies and inspiring nationalist movements. Even his defeats had lasting consequences, as they prompted the Congress of Vienna and a century-long balance of power in Europe. Napoleon's actions, whether intentional or not, left an indelible mark on the geopolitical landscape. The mythologization of Napoleon further contributes to his enduring legacy. From the romanticized depictions in 19th century literature to the critical assessments of modern historians, Napoleon's image has evolved over time. He has been portrayed as a hero, a tyrant, a visionary, and a tragic figure. This multiplicity of perspectives reflects the complexity of his character and the breadth of his impact. In many ways, Napoleon symbolizes the potential and pitfalls of human ambition. His ability to rise above his circumstances and achieve extraordinary success is inspiring. But his ultimate downfall serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of hubris. This duality ensures that his story remains relevant, offering lessons for leaders and individuals alike. As we delve deeper into the chapters of Napoleon's life, we will examine the forces that shaped him, the decisions that defined him, and the legacy he left behind. Each phase of his journey offers valuable insights into the interplay of personal ambition, societal change, and historical forces. In conclusion, Napoleon Bonaparte's life is a testament to the power of vision and determination. His story transcends the confines of his era, speaking to universal themes of leadership, ambition, and human fallibility. This chapter lays the groundwork for an exploration of a life that continues to inspire and provoke debate, reminding us of the enduring relevance of history's great figures. The story of Napoleon Bonaparte begins on August 15, 1769, in Ajaccio, Corsica, a year after the island's annexation by France. Born into a modest family of minor nobility, Napoleon's early years were shaped by the unique cultural and political environment of Corsica. The island's fierce sense of identity and its recent subjugation by France created a climate of resistance and pride that would deeply influence the young boy. Napoleon's family, the Bonapartes, had aligned themselves with the French authorities, a pragmatic decision that provided opportunities but also invited local scorn. Napoleon's father, Carlo Bonaparte, was an ambitious man who sought advancement for his family. As a lawyer and a representative of Corsica in the French court, Carlo secured educational opportunities for his children. Napoleon, the second son, was sent to mainland France at the age of 9 to attend a prestigious military academy in Brienne-le-Château. This departure marked the beginning of his lifelong connection to France and his separation from Corsican traditions, setting the stage for his later transformation into a French national hero. At Brienne, Napoleon distinguished himself as an intelligent and determined student. However, his Corsican accent, modest background, and outsider status made him the target of ridicule among his more aristocratic peers. This sense of isolation fostered in him a fierce drive to prove himself. Napoleon immersed himself in his studies, particularly excelling in mathematics and history, subjects that would later serve him well in his military career. His resilience and focus at Brienne revealed an early glimpse of the tenacity that would define his life. Napoleon's formative years coincided with a turbulent period in European history. The Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason, merit, and equality, was challenging traditional hierarchies. Simultaneously, the American Revolution was inspiring movements for self-determination worldwide. These ideas resonated deeply with the young Napoleon, who admired figures like Rousseau and Paoli, the Corsican nationalist leader. His education in France exposed him to these revolutionary ideals, which would later inform his policies and leadership style. At the age of 15, Napoleon graduated from Brienne and gained admission to the École Militaire in Paris, a premier military academy. His time in Paris was marked by both opportunity and struggle. Following the death of his father, Napoleon had to complete his studies in 1 year instead of the usual 2 to support his family. Despite these challenges, he graduated as a second lieutenant in the artillery, a branch of the military that appealed to his analytical mind and offered rapid advancement based on merit rather than birth. The artillery training Napoleon received was critical to his development as a military strategist. It emphasized precision, discipline, and innovation, qualities that would later characterize his approach to warfare. His early assignments were modest, but they provided him with valuable experience and exposed him to the realities of military life. While stationed in various garrisons, he also honed his political awareness, keeping a close eye on the unfolding events of the French Revolution. Napoleon's Corsican roots continued to influence him during these years. His loyalty to Corsica and its leader, Paoli, initially conflicted with his service to France. However, as Corsican politics became increasingly opposed to French rule, Napoleon made a decisive choice. He broke with Paoli and embraced his identity as a Frenchman, a pivotal moment that marked the end of his Corsican nationalist phase and the beginning of his allegiance to the broader revolutionary ideals of liberty and equality. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, provided Napoleon with a unique set of opportunities. The upheaval dismantled traditional structures of power, allowing talented individuals from modest backgrounds to rise through the ranks. Napoleon's ambition and ability positioned him perfectly to take advantage of this changing landscape. His early assignments during the Revolution, including his role in the Siege of Toulon, would soon catapult him into national prominence. Napoleon's early years reflect the interplay of personal determination and historical circumstance. His Corsican upbringing instilled in him a sense of resilience and identity, while his education in France equipped him with the tools to navigate a world in flux. The combination of his intellectual rigor, strategic mind, and adaptability set the foundation for his remarkable rise. In retrospect, the early years of Napoleon Bonaparte offer a compelling portrait of a young man shaped by the tensions of his time. From his Corsican roots to his military training in France, Each phase of his life contributed to the making of a leader who would redefine the course of history. These formative experiences not only prepared him for the challenges ahead, but also revealed the seeds of his ambition and brilliance, traits that would later astonish the world. Napoleon Bonaparte's ascent to prominence coincided with one of the most transformative periods in French history, the French Revolution. Beginning in 1789, the revolution dismantled the monarchy, upended feudal structures, and plunged the nation into political and social upheaval. Amidst this chaos, Napoleon's unique combination of talent, ambition, and adaptability allowed him to rise rapidly through the ranks of the military and secure his place as a key figure in the reshaping of France. The revolution created an unprecedented opportunity for individuals like Napoleon. The Ancien regime's rigid social hierarchy, which had traditionally favored aristocrats in military and political appointments, was being replaced by a meritocratic system that valued skill and achievement. This shift aligned perfectly with Napoleon's abilities and ambitions. His early education in military strategy and his natural leadership qualities positioned him as an ideal candidate to thrive in this new environment. Napoleon's first major opportunity to demonstrate his potential came in 1793 during the Siege of Toulon. Toulon, a strategic port city in southern France, had fallen into the hands of royalist forces backed by the British Navy. As a young artillery officer, Napoleon devised a bold plan to recapture the city by targeting key enemy positions with precision artillery strikes. His strategy proved successful, leading to the city's liberation and earning him a promotion to brigadier general at the age of 24. The Siege of Toulon was not only a military victory, but also a turning point in Napoleon's career, bringing him to the attention of revolutionary leaders. Despite his success, Napoleon's rise was not without challenges. The revolutionary government, known as the Committee of Public Safety, was deeply unstable, and political alliances were constantly shifting. Napoleon's connections with key figures like Maximilien Robespierre initially protected him, but Robespierre's fall in 1794 during the Thermidorian reaction left Napoleon temporarily vulnerable. Accused of being too closely associated with the Jacobins, he was briefly imprisoned. However, his release marked a moment of reinvention, as he quickly distanced himself from factional politics and focused on his military career. Napoleon's next significant breakthrough came in 1795 during the suppression of the Royalist uprising in Paris. Tasked with defending the revolutionary government, he used his artillery expertise to disperse the Royalist forces with a decisive and brutal use of cannon fire, a tactic that became known as the whiff of grapeshot. This success earned him the gratitude of the Directory, the governing body of post-revolutionary France, and led to his appointment as the commander of the Army of the Interior. This position not only solidified his reputation as a reliable defender of the revolution, but also allowed him to cultivate influential connections. In 1796, Napoleon was given command of the French Army of Italy, a poorly equipped and demoralized force tasked with combating Austrian and Piedmontese troops. Seizing the opportunity to prove his leadership, Napoleon transformed the army into a disciplined and motivated force. His Italian campaign marked the beginning of his legendary military career. Over the course of a year, he led his troops to a series of stunning victories, including the battles of Montagnat, Lodi, and Rivoli. These successes forced Austria to sign the Treaty of Campo Formio, effectively ending the war of the First Coalition in Italy and cementing Napoleon's status as a national hero. What set Napoleon apart during the Italian campaign was his innovative approach to warfare. He emphasized speed, maneuverability, and the element of surprise, often dividing his forces to confuse and outflank his enemies. His ability to inspire his troops, combined with his keen understanding of terrain and logistics, enabled him to achieve victories against numerically superior forces. Napoleon's leadership style was characterized by a mix of charisma and calculated pragmatism, earning him both the loyalty of his soldiers and the admiration of the French public. Beyond the battlefield, Napoleon demonstrated his political acumen during this period. As a conqueror, he implemented reforms in the territories he controlled, spreading revolutionary ideals such as the abolition of feudal privileges and the establishment of secular governance. These actions not only aligned with his vision of modern governance, but also served to legitimize French control over conquered regions. However, his insistence on imposing French dominance also began to reveal the imperial ambitions that would later define his rule. Napoleon's growing fame and influence did not go unnoticed by the Directory. While they celebrated his victories, they also viewed him with suspicion, recognizing the potential threat he posed to their authority. To curb his rising power, they assigned him to lead an ambitious but ultimately ill-fated campaign in Egypt in 1798. Although the Egyptian campaign will be explored in greater detail in a subsequent chapter, it is worth noting that this assignment reflected both Napoleon's growing stature and the challenges of balancing his ambitions with the political realities of revolutionary France. By the end of the 1790s, Napoleon had firmly established himself as one of France's most prominent figures. His military triumphs, coupled with his ability to navigate the volatile political landscape of the Revolution, set the stage for his eventual seizure of power. His rise during this period was a testament to his adaptability and strategic brilliance, as well as the unique opportunities created by the revolutionary era. In conclusion, Napoleon's rise to leadership during the French Revolution was the result of a confluence of personal talent and historical circumstance. The revolution's dismantling of traditional hierarchies created a fertile ground for his ascent, while his victories on the battlefield and his political savvy solidified his reputation. As the revolution gave way to the Consulate, Napoleon stood poised to shape the next chapter of France's history, embodying the transformative spirit of his time. Napoleon Bonaparte's transition from military leader to political ruler marked a pivotal phase in his journey. Following the coup of 18 Brumaire in November 1799, Napoleon overthrew the unstable Directory and established the Consulate, positioning himself as first consul. This period, spanning from 1799 to 1804, was characterized by sweeping reforms that reshaped France's political, legal, and social landscape. The consulate was not merely a consolidation of power. It was also a demonstration of Napoleon's capacity to stabilize and modernize a nation in turmoil. The consulate emerged at a time when France was weary of revolutionary instability and conflict. A decade of upheaval had left the country divided, economically strained, and vulnerable to both internal dissent and external threats. Napoleon, aware of these challenges, presented himself as a unifying figure who could bring order and progress. His rise to power was legitimized through a plebiscite in 1800, reflecting his understanding of the importance of public support. While the vote was far from a fair democratic process, it provided an aura of legitimacy to his regime. One of Napoleon's most enduring contributions during the consulate was the codification of French law. The Napoleonic Code, or Civil Code of 1804, replaced the fragmented and inconsistent legal systems that had existed under the Ancien regime. This code established principles of equality before the law, property rights, and secular governance. It abolished feudal privileges and emphasized meritocracy, reflecting the revolutionary ideals that had propelled Napoleon to power. The Napoleonic Code not only transformed France, but also became a model for legal systems in countries around the world. Economic stability was another cornerstone of Napoleon's reforms during the consulate. Recognizing the importance of financial stability for political legitimacy, he established the Bank of France in 1800 to centralize and regulate the nation's monetary system. Additionally, he introduced tax reforms that increased efficiency and reduced corruption, ensuring a steady flow of revenue to fund both domestic programs and military campaigns. These measures revitalized France's economy and bolstered public confidence in the government. Education was also a focus of Napoleon's vision for France. He implemented a system of public education that aimed to cultivate a loyal and competent citizenry. The establishment of lycées, or secondary schools, provided standardized education to prepare future administrators, military officers, and professionals. This centralized approach to education reflected Napoleon's belief in the importance of an educated elite to support the state while reinforcing his control over the nation's intellectual development. Napoleon's religious policies during the consulate further demonstrated his pragmatism. The Concordat of 1801, an agreement with Pope Pius VII, restored the Catholic Church's role in French society while maintaining state authority over religious affairs. This reconciliation addressed the deep divisions caused by the Revolution's secular policies and appeased both devout Catholics and those committed to revolutionary ideals. By striking this balance, Napoleon secured the loyalty of a significant portion of the population without compromising his control. In addition to domestic reforms, the consulate was marked by military achievements that solidified Napoleon's power. The French army, under his leadership, defeated the Austrian forces at the Battle of Marengo in 1800, forcing Austria to sign the Treaty of Lunéville. This victory, along with the Treaty of Amiens with Britain in 1802, brought a temporary end to the War of the Second Coalition and secured a period of peace for France. These successes not only enhanced Napoleon's prestige, but also provided him with the stability needed to focus on internal reforms. While the consulate brought significant progress, it was also a period of increasing authoritarianism. Napoleon's consolidation of power was evident in the Constitution of the Year 8, which concentrated executive authority in the hands of the first consul. Subsequent revisions to the Constitution further entrenched his dominance, culminating in his appointment as first consul for life in 1802. These actions revealed his ambition and foreshadowed the imperial ambitions that would soon materialize. The consulate also witnessed the expansion of Napoleon's cult of personality. Through propaganda, he portrayed himself as a savior of the revolution and a champion of the people. Artists, writers, and administrators were enlisted to glorify his achievements, creating a narrative that emphasized his indispensability to France's progress. This manipulation of public opinion ensured widespread support for his rule, even as he curtailed freedoms such as press liberty and political dissent. By 1804, the successes of the consulate had set the stage for Napoleon's ultimate transformation into Emperor of the French. The reforms he implemented during this period laid the foundation for a modern French state and demonstrated his ability to balance revolutionary ideals with pragmatic governance. However, they also highlighted the contradictions of his leadership. While he championed meritocracy and equality, he centralized power in a manner that betrayed the democratic aspirations of the revolution. In conclusion, the consulate was a defining period in Napoleon Bonaparte's career, showcasing his dual role as a reformer and an autocrat. His ability to stabilize and modernize France earned him widespread admiration and consolidated his authority. Yet his increasing concentration of power raised questions about the compatibility of his leadership with the revolutionary ideals he claimed to uphold. As France transitioned from a republic to an empire, the legacy of the consulate remained a testament to Napoleon's vision and the complexities of his rule. The year 1804 marked a dramatic turning point in Napoleon Bonaparte's trajectory as he transformed from the first consul of the Republic into Emperor of the French. This bold move consolidated his power, redefined his relationship with the nation, and signaled the dawn of the Napoleonic Empire. The coronation was not only a spectacle of grandeur, but also a deliberate political statement. Napoleon's elevation to emperor symbolized the culmination of his ambitions and the establishment of a new order, blending revolutionary ideals with monarchical authority. Napoleon's decision to crown himself emperor was carefully calculated. On December 2, 1804, at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, Pope Pius VII presided over the coronation ceremony, but it was Napoleon who placed the crown upon his own head. This act was steeped in symbolism. By crowning himself, Napoleon demonstrated his autonomy and rejected the traditional notion of divine right that underpinned European monarchies. He portrayed himself as a leader who derived legitimacy from the people rather than from God, a gesture that resonated with revolutionary ideals while simultaneously asserting his dominance. The establishment of the empire was legitimized through a plebiscite, a tactic Napoleon had used effectively during the consulate. The overwhelming approval of the French electorate underscored his popularity, but it also reflected the control he exercised over public opinion and political processes. The empire was framed as a continuation of the revolution's achievements, with Napoleon cast as the guarantor of stability, equality, and progress. This narrative helped reconcile the apparent contradiction between revolutionary principles and the creation of a hereditary monarchy. One of the key motivations behind Napoleon's coronation was the need to secure a stable succession. By declaring himself emperor, Napoleon sought to establish a dynastic system that would ensure continuity and prevent the political chaos that had plagued revolutionary France. The creation of the Bonaparte dynasty was also intended to elevate France's status on the international stage, positioning the nation as a peer to the established monarchies of Europe. This strategic move reinforced Napoleon's vision of a modern empire rooted in meritocracy and military glory. The Napoleonic Empire was characterized by its centralization of power and its vast territorial ambitions. Napoleon implemented reforms to strengthen the imperial government, including the creation of an imperial nobility that rewarded loyalty and service. While this move appeared to contradict his earlier rejection of aristocratic privilege, it was consistent with his pragmatic approach to governance. The new nobility was based on merit rather than birth, aligning with his belief in rewarding talent and achievement. Militarily, the empire reached its zenith during the early years of Napoleon's reign. The Grande Armée, a formidable force that epitomized the effectiveness of Napoleon's leadership, achieved a series of remarkable victories. The Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, often regarded as his greatest triumph, saw Napoleon decisively defeat the combined forces of Austria and Russia. This victory not only solidified his reputation as a military genius, but also reshaped the geopolitical landscape of Europe. The subsequent treaties, such as the Treaty of Pressburg, expanded French influence and secured Napoleon's dominance over much of the continent. Napoleon's imperial ambitions extended beyond Europe. The Continental System, a policy designed to weaken Britain through economic isolation, sought to establish French hegemony and undermine Britain's global trade networks. While the system demonstrated Napoleon's strategic vision, it also revealed the limits of his power. The economic strain it placed on allied and occupied territories created resentment, and Britain's naval supremacy ultimately rendered the policy ineffective. This failure highlighted the challenges of sustaining an empire built on both military conquest and economic control. Despite his successes, Napoleon's rule faced growing resistance. Nationalist movements began to emerge in occupied territories, fueled by a desire for self-determination and opposition to French dominance. In Spain, the Peninsular War, 1808 to 1814, became a quagmire for French forces as guerrilla warfare and British intervention drained resources and morale. This conflict underscored the limits of Napoleon's reach and marked the beginning of the empire's decline. Domestically, Napoleon's reign was marked by a mix of consolidation and repression. While he maintained many of the revolutionary reforms, such as the Napoleonic Code and public education, he also curtailed civil liberties and political freedoms. The press was tightly controlled, and dissent was suppressed. Napoleon's emphasis on loyalty and obedience ensured stability, but came at the cost of individual rights. This authoritarian approach reflected his belief in the necessity of strong, centralized leadership to sustain the empire. By the end of the first decade of the 19th century, the Napoleonic Empire stood as a testament to Napoleon's ambition and vision. However, it was also increasingly fragile, with mounting challenges both at home and abroad. The empire's dependence on continuous military success and the growing resistance of subjugated nations foreshadowed the difficulties that lay ahead. Napoleon's coronation and the establishment of the empire represented the peak of his power, but they also set the stage for the conflicts and eventual downfall that would define the latter years of his reign. In conclusion, Napoleon's coronation and the creation of the Napoleonic Empire marked a significant turning point in his career and in European history. It encapsulated the duality of his leadership, a blend of revolutionary ideals and authoritarian practices, of visionary reforms and unrelenting ambition. While the empire brought glory and innovation, it also revealed the inherent tensions and vulnerabilities of Napoleon's rule, tensions that would ultimately shape the dramatic arc of his life and legacy. The years following Napoleon's coronation as emperor marked the height of his power. By 1810, The Napoleonic Empire dominated much of continental Europe, stretching from the Iberian Peninsula to the borders of Russia. Through military conquest, strategic alliances, and the imposition of French governance, Napoleon established a sprawling empire that sought to reshape Europe under his vision. However, this era of supremacy also revealed the inherent challenges of maintaining such an expansive and diverse empire. It was a period defined by triumphs, contradictions, and mounting pressures that would ultimately lead to the unraveling of his ambitions. Napoleon's dominance was underpinned by a series of military victories that showcased his strategic brilliance. After his coronation, his forces continued to secure decisive wins, such as the Battle of Jena Auerstedt in 1806, where the Prussian army was thoroughly defeated. These victories allowed Napoleon to redraw the map of Europe, dissolving the Holy Roman Empire and establishing the Confederation of the Rhine, a coalition of German states under French influence. The creation of satellite states such as the Kingdom of Italy and the Duchy of Warsaw further cemented French control and extended Napoleon's reach. Central to Napoleon's strategy was the Continental System, an ambitious economic policy aimed at isolating Britain and crippling its economy. Instituted after the defeat of the French Navy at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, the system sought to blockade British trade by forbidding European nations from engaging with Britain. While the policy demonstrated Napoleon's determination to challenge Britain's dominance, it also revealed the limitations of his power. Enforcement proved difficult, and the economic strain it placed on Allied and occupied territories generated widespread resentment. The challenges of maintaining the continental system were emblematic of the broader difficulties Napoleon faced in governing his empire. While he sought to spread the principles of the French Revolution, such as legal equality, secular governance, and meritocracy, across Europe his methods often contradicted these ideals. Conquered territories were subjected to heavy taxation, conscription, and strict control, fostering resistance among local populations. In Spain, the imposition of Joseph Bonaparte as king in 1808 sparked the Peninsular War, a brutal conflict marked by guerrilla warfare and growing nationalist fervor. This war drained French resources and undermined Napoleon's authority in the region. The Peninsular War was a turning point that highlighted the limits of Napoleon's power. The British, under the leadership of the Duke of Wellington, provided significant support to Spanish and Portuguese forces, turning the conflict into a protracted struggle that sapped French strength. The war also inspired nationalist movements in other parts of Europe, as subject peoples began to resist French domination. Napoleon's vision of a unified and harmonious continental empire began to crumble under the weight of local resistance and external opposition. As the empire expanded, so too did the demands on France's military and economy. Napoleon's reliance on conscription to sustain his armies placed a heavy burden on the French population. The Grande Armée, though formidable, became increasingly stretched as it was required to maintain control over distant territories while engaging in continuous warfare. The economic toll of constant conflict, combined with the disruption caused by the continental system, strained both the empire's resources and the loyalty of its subjects. Napoleon's personal life during this period also reflected his political priorities. In 1810, he divorced his first wife, Josephine de Beauharnais, due to her inability to produce an heir. He then married Marie-Louise of Austria, a move that symbolized his desire to secure a dynastic legacy and legitimize his rule through an alliance with the Habsburg monarchy. The marriage produced a son, Napoleon II, ensuring the continuation of the Bonaparte dynasty. However, this union also alienated some of Napoleon's supporters, who viewed it as a betrayal of his revolutionary roots. Despite the growing challenges, Napoleon continued to pursue his imperial ambitions. His invasion of Russia in 1812 was a bold attempt to enforce the continental system and compel Tsar Alexander I to remain an ally. The campaign, however, proved disastrous. The Russian strategy of scorched earth, combined with harsh winter conditions and logistical failures, led to the near destruction of the Grande Armée. The retreat from Moscow marked a turning point in Napoleon's fortunes, exposing the vulnerabilities of his empire and emboldening his enemies. The consequences of the Russian campaign were immediate and far-reaching. The loss of manpower and resources weakened Napoleon's ability to defend his empire, while the perception of his invincibility was shattered. A coalition of European powers, including Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, united against him in the War of the Sixth Coalition. The subsequent defeats at battles such as Leipzig in 1813 further eroded his control over Europe as Allied forces began to reclaim territories and push toward France. Napoleon's zenith was defined by both its achievements and its contradictions. His ability to conquer and reorganize much of Europe demonstrated his strategic genius and visionary approach to governance. Yet his empire's reliance on military conquest and centralization created an unstable foundation. The contradictions between his revolutionary ideals and imperial practices, as well as the economic and social strains of his policies, sowed the seeds of dissent and resistance. In conclusion, the height of Napoleon's power was a period of extraordinary achievements and profound challenges. While he succeeded in building a vast empire and reshaping the European order, the inherent tensions of his rule and the limits of his resources foreshadowed the struggles to come. The contradictions of the Napoleonic Empire, between revolution and autocracy, innovation and oppression, reflected the complexities of its leader. As Napoleon's empire reached its zenith, the forces that would lead to his decline were already beginning to take shape. The years following Napoleon's disastrous Russian campaign in 1812 marked the beginning of his empire's decline. Although he remained a formidable force, the cracks in his dominion were becoming increasingly evident. The coalition of European powers that had long opposed him gained strength and unity, while internal dissent and economic strain weakened France from within. The period from 1813 to 1815 was a tumultuous chapter in Napoleon's life, characterized by military defeats, political instability, and his eventual fall from power. The Russian campaign had catastrophic consequences for Napoleon. The loss of hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the Grande Armée not only weakened his military capacity, but also shattered the aura of invincibility that had defined his reign. The retreat from Moscow emboldened his adversaries, who formed the Sixth Coalition to take advantage of France's weakened position. This alliance, comprising Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria, and other European powers, represented a united front determined to end Napoleon's dominance once and for all. The War of the Sixth Coalition culminated in the Battle of Leipzig in October 1813, also known as the Battle of Nations. This engagement, involving more than 500,000 soldiers, was the largest battle in European history at the time. Despite Napoleon's tactical brilliance, the sheer size and coordination of the coalition forces overwhelmed the French army. The defeat at Leipzig forced Napoleon to retreat to France, signaling the beginning of the end for his empire. The coalition's victory also encouraged many of Napoleon's allies and satellite states to abandon him, further isolating France. Domestically, Napoleon faced growing discontent. The heavy toll of years of war, both in human lives and economic resources, had left the French population weary and disillusioned. Conscription, high taxes, and the disruption caused by the continental system created widespread dissatisfaction. Moreover, the liberal and nationalist movements Napoleon had inadvertently inspired in occupied territories began to influence opposition within France itself. Calls for peace and reform grew louder, undermining Napoleon's ability to rally the nation. By early 1814, coalition forces invaded France itself, marking a dramatic shift in the war. Napoleon, with his characteristic determination, mounted a series of defensive campaigns, known as the 6 Days Campaign, in which he displayed his unmatched tactical skill by defeating larger enemy forces in quick succession. However, these victories were ultimately futile in the face of overwhelming coalition numbers. Paris fell to the Allied forces in March 1814, and Napoleon was compelled to abdicate the throne on April 6, 1814. Following his abdication, Napoleon was exiled to the island of Elba, a small Mediterranean island off the coast of Italy. Despite the seemingly comfortable conditions of his exile, Napoleon was restless and unrepentant. He retained the title of emperor and governed Elba with the same energy and ambition he had exhibited as ruler of France. However, the diminished scope of his authority and the political instability in France under the restored Bourbon monarchy provided him with the opportunity he needed to attempt a dramatic return to power. In March 1815, Napoleon escaped from Elba and returned to France in what became known as the 100 Days. His arrival was met with a mixture of shock and enthusiasm. As he marched toward Paris, soldiers and citizens rallied to his side, abandoning the Bourbon king Louis XVIII. By the time he reached the capital, Napoleon had regained control of France without a single shot being fired. His return was a testament to the enduring loyalty he commanded among many of his supporters and the deep divisions that still plagued French society. Napoleon's return reignited the fears of the European powers, who quickly formed the Seventh Coalition to confront him. Determined to secure his position, Napoleon launched a preemptive military campaign in Belgium, aiming to divide and defeat the coalition forces before they could fully mobilize. This strategy led to the fateful Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. Facing British and Prussian forces under the command of the Duke of Wellington and Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher, Napoleon's army suffered a decisive defeat. The battle marked the final collapse of his military and political ambitions. The defeat at Waterloo was the result of a combination of factors, including the superior coordination of coalition forces, the fatigue and inexperience of Napoleon's troops, and his own miscalculations. While Napoleon's tactical acumen remained formidable, he could not overcome the odds stacked against him. The battle's outcome not only ended the 100 Days, but also marked the definitive conclusion of his rule and the Napoleonic Wars. Following his defeat, Napoleon was captured and exiled once more, this time to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. Unlike his exile in Elba, his confinement on St. Helena was harsh and isolated, reflecting the determination of the Allied powers to prevent any possibility of his return. He spent the remaining years of his life on the island, reflecting on his legacy and dictating his memoirs. In conclusion, the period from 1813 to 1815 was a dramatic and poignant chapter in Napoleon's life, highlighting both the heights of his ambition and the depths of his fall. His military genius and resilience were on full display, but so too were the limits of his power and the cumulative effects of years of war and resistance. The decline of Napoleon's empire serves as a powerful reminder of the challenges inherent in maintaining hegemony and the consequences of overreach. While his defeat at Waterloo marked the end of an era, Napoleon's impact on France and Europe endured, shaping the course of history for generations to come. Following his defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in June 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte was exiled for the second and final time. Unlike his earlier confinement on Elba, this exile was designed to be permanent and isolated. The British government, determined to prevent any possibility of his return, chose the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean as his prison. Far removed from Europe, Napoleon spent the last 6 years of his life on the island, where his activities, writings, and reflections laid the groundwork for the enduring legacy of his life and reign. The conditions of Napoleon's exile on St. Helena were harsh. Located over 1,200 miles from the nearest landmass, the island was both geographically and psychologically isolating. Napoleon was confined to Longwood House, a damp and windswept residence that was poorly maintained and uncomfortable. British officials, led by Sir Hudson Lowe, kept a close watch on him, restricting his correspondence and controlling his access to visitors. These measures, intended to minimize his influence, also fueled Napoleon's resentment and contributed to his growing sense of martyrdom. Despite these hardships, Napoleon remained intellectually active. His daily routine included reading extensively, engaging in discussions with his small entourage of loyal companions, and dictating his memoirs. These memoirs, later published as the Memoirs of Napoleon, were carefully crafted to present a particular narrative of his life. In them, Napoleon portrayed himself as a champion of the French Revolution, a reformer, and a visionary leader whose ambitions had been thwarted by the combined forces of reactionary monarchies. This version of his story would play a significant role in shaping public perception of his legacy. Napoleon used his time on St. Helena to reflect on his achievements and failures. He often justified his actions as being necessary for the progress of civilization, arguing that his wars were fought to protect the revolutionary ideals of liberty and equality from the reactionary forces of Europe. At the same time, he acknowledged some of his mistakes, particularly his invasion of Russia, which he described as a turning point in his decline. These reflections were tinged with bitterness, as he lamented the betrayal of allies and the ingratitude of those he had once elevated to power. The isolation of St. Helena also allowed Napoleon to cultivate an image of himself as a tragic hero. He likened his fate to that of historical figures such as Prometheus or Alexander the Great, presenting himself as a visionary leader who had been misunderstood and unjustly punished. This narrative resonated with many of his contemporaries and contributed to the rise of the Napoleonic legend, a powerful myth that portrayed him as a symbol of resistance against oppression and a figure of unparalleled genius. One of the most enduring aspects of Napoleon's legacy was his ability to inspire loyalty and admiration even in exile. The small group of companions who accompanied him to St. Helena, including General Bertrand, General Montholon, and Count Las Cases, remained devoted to him despite the difficult conditions. Their accounts of his final years, along with his own writings, painted a sympathetic picture of a man who, despite his flaws, was driven by a grand vision for humanity. These narratives helped sustain the image of Napoleon as a figure of enduring significance. Napoleon's health began to deteriorate during his time on St. Helena. The harsh climate, combined with the stress of confinement and his sedentary lifestyle, took a toll on his physical condition. He suffered from recurring stomach pain, which was later diagnosed as stomach cancer, the illness that ultimately claimed his life. Despite his declining health, Napoleon continued to engage in intellectual pursuits and to correspond with his followers in Europe, maintaining his influence even in isolation. On May 5, 1821, Napoleon passed away at the age of 51. His final words, "France, Army, Head of the Army, Josephine," reflected the enduring focus of his thoughts, his country, his military career, and his first wife. His death marked the end of an extraordinary life, but it also solidified his place in history as one of the most compelling and controversial figures of the modern era. His burial on St. Helena, in a simple grave marked only by his initials, further contributed to the aura of humility and martyrdom that surrounded his final years. The legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte grew exponentially after his death. The Napoleonic legend, fueled by the Romanticism of the 19th century, cast him as a symbol of ambition, determination, and genius. His military strategies continued to be studied in military academies around the world, while his reforms, such as the Napoleonic Code, left a lasting impact on legal systems in Europe and beyond. In France, his memory became a source of both pride and division, representing the dual legacies of the Revolution and the Empire. In conclusion, Napoleon's years on St. Helena were a period of reflection, literary production, and the cultivation of his posthumous legacy. Although physically confined, he remained a powerful figure whose ideas and image continued to shape the world. His exile and death on the remote island transformed him into a mythic figure, a status that ensured his influence would endure long after his demise. Through his writings and the loyalty of his followers, Napoleon's story transcended the limitations of his circumstances, securing his place in history as a leader who defined an era. Napoleon Bonaparte's legacy is a multifaceted one, influencing not only the history of France, but also the broader trajectory of European and global events. His rule, characterized by military conquests, political reforms, and revolutionary ideas, left an indelible mark on the world. While his empire collapsed in 1815, his influence endured long after his death. The impact of his reign can be observed in various aspects of modern society, including law, governance, military strategy, and the evolution of European politics. One of the most significant contributions of Napoleon was the Napoleonic Code, also known as the Civil Code of 1804. This legal framework, which Napoleon implemented in France and in many of his conquered territories, became one of the most important and enduring legacies of his rule. The Napoleonic Code codified laws concerning civil rights, property, family relations, and the legal status of individuals, moving away from the feudal and arbitrary systems that had prevailed in many European countries. It emphasized principles such as equality before the law, secularism, and the protection of private property, which became foundational elements of modern legal systems. The Napoleonic Code had a profound influence not only in France but across Europe and the world. Many countries that were under Napoleon's control, including Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and several German states, adopted versions of the code. Beyond Europe, the principles of the Napoleonic Code served as the basis for legal reforms in regions such as Latin America and the Middle East. In this way, Napoleon's legal reforms contributed to the spread of modernity and the principles of civil law, which continue to shape legal systems in many countries today. Napoleon's military legacy is also one of the most enduring aspects of his impact. His campaigns and battles, including the Battle of Austerlitz, the Battle of Leipzig, and the Battle of Waterloo, became defining moments in military history. Napoleon's strategic genius and innovative tactics, such as the use of mass conscription to form large, highly mobile armies and his emphasis on rapid and decisive campaigns, influenced military thinking for generations. His ability to maneuver troops and resources quickly, as well as his focus on maintaining initiative and psychological warfare, became key elements of modern military doctrine. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, military leaders such as Helmuth von Moltke the Elder, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and others studied Napoleon's tactics and applied them in their own campaigns. The emphasis on mass mobilization, the coordination of different arms of the military, and the ability to adapt to rapidly changing battlefield conditions are principles that continue to shape military strategy to this day. Napoleon's military innovations, particularly in the fields of logistics and battlefield command, remains central to the study of warfare at military academies around the world. Politically, Napoleon's legacy is more complex. On one hand, he is often celebrated as the defender of the French Revolution, having preserved many of its core principles, such as equality under the law and the secularization of government institutions. His establishment of a centralized, efficient state with a meritocratic bureaucracy was revolutionary in the sense that it moved away from feudal privileges and aristocratic rule. The French civil service, with its emphasis on competence and the appointment of individuals based on merit, became a model for other European nations. However, Napoleon's rule also represents the tensions between revolutionary ideals and authoritarian governance. His establishment of a dynastic monarchy and his centralization of power under the guise of a republic marked a departure from the very principles of democracy and republicanism that had been central to the French Revolution. While Napoleon did implement reforms that improved the lives of many ordinary citizens, his methods were often dictatorial. He maintained tight control over the press, suppressed political opposition, and used his military forces to quell any signs of rebellion. This authoritarianism, while pragmatic in the context of his time, generated significant opposition and laid the groundwork for the political instability that would follow his downfall. Napoleon's reign also had a profound impact on the political landscape of Europe. His conquest of much of the continent reshaped borders, overthrew old monarchies, and led to the spread of nationalist movements. In the wake of his empire's collapse, the Congress of Vienna in 1815 sought to restore the traditional European order, but the changes Napoleon had initiated could not be undone. The idea of the nation-state, which had been largely dormant before Napoleon's conquests, began to take root in Europe. Nationalism, inspired in part by Napoleon's own actions and the resistance to his empire, would become a dominant political force in the 19th century. Napoleon's influence extended beyond Europe, affecting the development of modern political thought and the broader international system. His expansionist policies and the creation of a French-led European order challenged the old balance of power, setting the stage for the modern international system. The spread of the Napoleonic Code, along with the concept of legal equality and the rights of individuals, laid the intellectual groundwork for the later development of human rights frameworks and the rise of modern democratic ideals. While Napoleon's empire was short-lived, the the ripples of his rule were felt for decades. His military victories and the political reorganization of Europe triggered a wave of revolutions and wars that reshaped the continent throughout the 19th century. The fall of the Napoleonic Empire did not mark the end of his influence. Rather, it ushered in a new phase of European history in which the values and ideas Napoleon championed, such as meritocracy, legal equality, and nationalism, remained central themes. In France, Napoleon's legacy remained a source of both admiration and controversy. His memory was fiercely contested, particularly during the Bourbon Restoration, when monarchists sought to erase the revolutionary and imperial aspects of his rule. However, Napoleon's return to political discourse in the mid-19th century, particularly under his nephew, Napoleon III, reflected the enduring popularity of his ideas. Napoleon III's rise to power in 1848 and the establishment of the Second French Empire were direct continuations of Napoleon Bonaparte's legacy. In conclusion, Napoleon Bonaparte's legacy is one of profound and lasting impact. His contributions to law, military strategy, and political organization shaped the course of modern history. Although his empire was short-lived, the ideas he embodied, the promotion of legal equality, meritocracy, and nationalism, resonated long after his fall. Napoleon's influence continues to be felt today in both the structures of modern governments and the way military conflicts are conducted. His complex legacy as a leader who both embodied the ideals of the French Revolution and implemented authoritarian rule remains a central subject of debate, ensuring that his story will remain a focal point of historical discourse for generations to come. Napoleon Bonaparte remains one of history's most controversial and enigmatic figures. While his reign as Emperor of France was marked by extraordinary military victories, legal reforms, and political consolidation, his subsequent defeat and exile to St. Helena transformed him into a symbol of both genius and tragedy. Over the years, his image has evolved into a powerful myth, a blend of fact and legend that continues to captivate the public imagination. This chapter seeks to explore the duality of Napoleon's identity as both a historical figure and a myth, examining how he has been remembered and interpreted through time. At the heart of the Napoleonic myth is the figure of the self-made man. Born into modest circumstances on the island of Corsica, Napoleon's rise to power is often depicted as a triumph of ambition, intellect, and determination. His success story resonates with the ideals of meritocracy, emphasizing the idea that an individual, regardless of their origins, could ascend to the highest echelons of power through skill, vision, and perseverance. This narrative has been a central theme in the way Napoleon is portrayed, not only in France, but also in the broader context of modernity and the rise of individualism. Napoleon's own construction of his image played a significant role in the formation of the Napoleonic myth. Throughout his career, he carefully crafted his public persona, projecting an image of strength, brilliance, and infallibility. He presented himself as the embodiment of the French Revolution's ideals, a protector of liberty and equality who had been betrayed by monarchies and foreign powers. His use of propaganda, including state-sponsored art, monumental architecture, and speeches, helped to solidify this image and establish a narrative that positioned him as both a historical hero and a modern icon. However, the myth of Napoleon is not without its contradictions. While he is often celebrated as a champion of the people and a reformer, his rule was also characterized by authoritarianism, military aggression, and the suppression of political dissent. His creation of an empire, complete with a dynastic monarchy, was in direct conflict with the democratic principles of the French Revolution. This tension between his revolutionary ideals and his autocratic practices has been the subject of much debate. Some view him as a paradoxical figure who sought to consolidate power in ways that ultimately undermined the very freedoms he once championed, while others argue that his centralization of authority was necessary to maintain order and stability in a time of chaos. Napoleon's military campaigns have also contributed significantly to the formation of his myth. His victories at Austerlitz, Jena, and Wagram, among others, have been immortalized as examples of military genius. His ability to command vast armies, make rapid strategic decisions, and achieved decisive victories against overwhelming odds has earned him a place among the greatest military commanders in history. Yet his later defeats, especially the catastrophic invasion of Russia and the final defeat at Waterloo, complicate the narrative of invincibility that surrounds his image. These events, while tarnishing his military reputation, also add to the dramatic quality of his story, reinforcing the myth of the tragic hero whose hubris led to his downfall. The myth of Napoleon as a tragic hero is central to his legacy. Following his defeat and exile, Napoleon became a figure of sympathy and fascination. His years on St. Helena, marked by isolation and ill health, were seen by many as a form of martyrdom, with Napoleon cast as a visionary leader punished by fate for his ambition. This portrayal was popularized in the 19th century by writers, historians, and artists who sought to elevate Napoleon's status as a figure of suffering and redemption. His death at a young age, at 51, further fueled this narrative, cementing his place as a larger-than-life figure who, despite his flaws, was a victim of historical forces beyond his control. Napoleon's status as a myth was not limited to his own time. Rather, it evolved throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, often reflecting the political and cultural contexts in which he was viewed. During the reign of his nephew, Napoleon III, the Napoleonic legend was resurrected as a means of legitimizing the Second French Empire. Napoleon III embraced the image of his uncle as a national hero, and his regime actively sought to revive the memory of the Napoleonic era. The myth of Napoleon became entwined with the aspirations of a new French empire, and Napoleon III's attempts to emulate his uncle's glory were seen as both an homage and an effort to recreate the political and military success that defined Napoleon's reign. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Napoleon also became a symbol of European nationalism. His campaigns had sparked nationalist movements across Europe, and in the years following his defeat, his figure became an emblem of resistance against oppression and foreign domination. In countries such as Italy and Germany, where unification movements were taking shape, Napoleon's legacy was invoked as a symbol of national unity and strength. His ideas of a united Europe under a single, cohesive political order resonated with the aspirations of these emerging nation-states, even as his empire had crumbled. Napoleon's myth also extends beyond Europe. In Latin America, where revolutionary movements were gaining momentum in the early 19th century, Napoleon was often seen as a model for leaders such as Simón Bolívar, who sought to liberate their nations from colonial rule. The ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity that Napoleon had espoused in the early days of the French Revolution found resonance in the struggles for independence in the Americas. Napoleon's image was adopted as a symbol of resistance against imperialism, even as his own imperial ambitions were seen as a cautionary tale. The continuing fascination with Napoleon can also be attributed to his complexity as a historical figure. He was both a product of the French Revolution and a force that sought to transcend it. His reign represents the intersection of revolutionary ideals and imperial power, offering a rich field for historical analysis and interpretation. Napoleon's contradictions, his advocacy for democracy and his embrace of authoritarianism, his military genius and his strategic blunders, make him a subject of enduring interest and debate. He remains a symbol of ambition and genius, as well as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. In conclusion, Napoleon Bonaparte's legacy is a dynamic interplay between historical fact and myth, a figure whose life continues to be interpreted and reinterpreted in various cultural, political, and historical contexts. The man who rose from humble beginnings to become the Emperor of the French is simultaneously a symbol of greatness and tragedy, a military genius and a flawed leader. His life and rule left an indelible mark on France and Europe, but his myth transcends his historical reality, becoming a powerful narrative that continues to influence the way we understand ambition, power, and leadership. The myth of Napoleon, with all its contradictions, ensures that his story will remain a vital part of history for generations to come.